Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone. And may Allah bless everyone who attended today, Rabbi, Christian, Muslim, from any religion, because you're here with the truth. That's what it matters. It really doesn't matter about your religion, but it matters that you are standing with the truth. But we're a human being, you know. We're trained as doctors. We took the oath. And I have been in many medical missions. I don't care about the political agendas of people and what they care about. I've been in Syria. I treated soldiers of the aggressive Syrian regime. I didn't ask about who this soldier belongs to. And although sometimes I wake up next day in the morning, I don't find the soldier. God knows what they did with that after doing 4 hours of surgery. But we are here to save a life. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said in the Quran, وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. Whoever saves a life as if he or she saved the whole mankind. And this is what we care about, and this is what our group has been doing for the past 15 years or so in different medical missions, different war zones. Everyone was, witnessing and watching what's going on in Gaza from day one, and knowing the history of Gaza and Palestine. We knew it was going to get bad. So our medical crew were watching and preparing themselves. And we knew that they will need us at some point, and we tried from day one. I put my name actually on many medical organizations and many lists, and there was really almost no hope for a couple of months until finally I got a call just a couple of weeks ago, a little bit more than 2 weeks ago, and they told me WHO is coordinating this medical mission. This is going to happen. So we need only trauma surgeons, and we need you to consider being one of the surgeons going there. So we did some communication with the surgeons, and alhamdulillah, it did happen. The destruction of Gaza is beyond imagination. You have watched the TV on a daily basis, and for me, whenever I see this destruction, as a trauma surgeon, being in Aleppo, being in Homs, being in many other cities where massive destruction has happened, I can feel for the physicians, doctors, surgeons, nurses treating patients. I know they will be exhausted, they will be tired, and they need help. And this is what motivated us to go there. We have been on in Toronto and in many demonstrations and rallies before this has happened. I knew that things will get really bad since the Ahli Baptist Christian hospital was bombarded, and that was October 17th. And immediately I came back from work and I told my wife, we have to go to the rally. And I went with my family. 400 people, innocent people, took refuge to that hospital, thinking that because it's Christian, probably it would be safer. But we figured out there's nothing really safe in Gaza, unfortunately. They did not respect any church, any mosque, any school, nothing really was respected. And I have been, in many Toronto rallies, and I spoke that this is a turning point, and if the Canadian government, if the top people in the government, they're not going to condemn this. I don't care who did it. I don't care politically who is behind it. If they're not going to condemn it, they're going to wait to see who did this and who did that, then we are, waiting to see more atrocities and more attacks on medical facilities. And in fact, this is what happened because there was no condemnation of this atrocity. We've seen it happening again in Al-Shifa, in Indonesian hospital, in Kamal Adwan hospital, and many other hospitals. And we figured out this is systematic attack on the healthcare facilities in Gaza and northern Gaza because they want to push the people down. And I know from being in Aleppo, the people in the area always tell us, don't leave the hospital, please, because if you leave it, the people next will have to leave the area. See, any aggressive kind of organization or government, you name it, they know that if they get rid of the doctors, they get rid of the hospitals, the people will feel it's unsafe and they will be willing to leave their houses and take refuge to other areas. I think this was systematic, unfortunately, because we've seen it hospital after hospital until the whole Gaza, northern Gaza, had no single healthcare facility. And currently, the whole Gaza, or northern Gaza, has no single healthcare facility able to take care of simple surgery. So imagine not only if you're attacked by an alien strike, if your child gets an appendicitis that needs simple appendectomy, simple surgery that takes half hour in any hospital in Canada can do that. There's no single hospital in Gaza, northern Gaza, where we have now about 500,000, the estimation I got from people in Gaza, can or be able to have access to a hospital to treat your child. This is how bad the situation is. Forget about the bleeding. If you have simple wound bleeding, moderate severity wounds, nobody can take care of these because the hospitals left behind in Gaza, northern Gaza, are just medical points. They're not hospital. Even if you hear the WHO or UN, with all respect, that they are saying we are trying to bring these hospitals back. None of the hospitals came back, and the patients and the families are suffering from simple, diseases. If you get a vaginal bleeding, miscarriage, nobody is there to be able to treat you properly in Gaza, northern Gaza. You may just bleed to death. Even we're not talking about traumatic injuries. So we gathered in Cairo and we decided we have to go there and help the doctors and nurses of Gaza. We were the first medical mission that was allowed to get into Gaza through the Rafah crossing. It's a longer trip, and you discover in this trip, it's different than my previous Syrian trips to Aleppo and these cities. Because to be fair, whether you like the Turkish government or not, they were very helpful to us, facilitating our movement back and forth between Turkey and northern Syria. But here you find they put all the obstacles for you, so you will never do it again, right? And that's why I understand, before the Gaza war, I wanted last year, we donated some medical equipment from our organization to Gaza. Shifa Hospital, they told me never go through the Rafah crossing, go through Israel. It's way easier. To be fair for the Israeli people, way easier to go through Tel Aviv. But anyway, it was the only way to get through the Rafah crossing, and it's 14 hours trip in the bus and maybe 15 checkpoints. And every checkpoint, they ask you the same question: who are you? We say the previous checkpoint asked the same question. Show us the passports. Canadian insurgents. How many Canadian? How many surgeons? How many American? What's your specialty? And all these kind of questions. And why are you going there? And then you wait an hour. Half an hour, 2 hours sometimes. One checkpoint, 4 hours. 4 hours just waiting. We don't know why. But alhamdulillah, eventually we made it through this very interesting Sinai desert. Beautiful desert, but it's almost empty actually. We were able to drink some coffee in the way and right from cars. They do the coffee in the cars itself, right, beside the road, and we kept going, and we've seen some interesting things on the road. Taxis. These are the taxis that we use in the desert of Sinai to move people around in the towns of Sinai. So we made it through Sinai, and we made it to Rafah, and it was a little bit late. It took us 14 hours, as I said. and they told us that it's too late now, you can't cross the border. I felt probably they're not going to allow us to cross it at all after all. So they said, go back to Al Arish and sleep over there, you figure it out. So we went back very, depressed. We were 6 surgeons, 4 from US and 2 from Canada. We took all specialties thinking that if, we can go to one hospital, we can't split between 2 or 3 hospitals, at least we'll be functioning team. So we have a neurosurgery for head injuries, thoracic for the chest, abdomen and trauma. We have orthopedic for the limbs. So we're like self-sufficient in case we don't find enough staff over there to be able to help us. But finally, next day in the morning, we rushed again to the border and back and forth between them. Not very nice people, to be fair, on the border, but I feel they are disabled and they have to go back and forth between the people in Egypt and Israel to get us through the border. And finally, we were able to cross the border. Once you cross the border, you do have a lot of fears of what is going to happen to you. And although WHO did coordinate, if you will, the trip and help to put our names at the border, but right over there they would have us sign a waiver that if you die, if anything happens to you, if an airstrike hits you, we are not responsible, you cannot sue us. And we all signed quickly. We said, we know we're going to a war zone, we may not come back to our family and to Canada or US, but that's all what they do. They just put your names on the border and they tell us you are on your own, and whatever happens to you, God help you. We agreed about that and we understand where we're going for sure. So we entered Gaza finally. But before that, right from the beginning of Sinai all the way to Rafah, you see thousands of trucks. If you can go to the next, they have been for weeks waiting just to see the bureaucracy of all sides. I'm not going to name anyone actually. In terms of helping one of the worst humanitarian crises on earth. Some of these trucks have food and rice and you name it. And I had, subhanAllah, the opportunity to test the rice and you can't even eat it because it has been on the trucks for weeks and weeks. So a lot of that food will get spoiled before it gets into Gaza. And I don't think there's probably more than a handful of trucks passed, although we were at the Rafah at night and the morning for hours. And during that time, only a handful of the trucks were able to pass through Rafah. Although there were thousands of supplies, humanitarian aids and medical supplies waiting to cross the border. But for some reason, there's no political will to get the supplies through. And I knew that there's collective punishment of the people in Gaza right on when I witnessed that. You cross the border and with all the medical equipment and supplies that we were able to take with us, and you find things are way easier on the other side of the border for sure. There's no more bureaucracy, people are welcoming you, everyone wants to help you, as if you are in a different planet now, right? From all aspects, from the suffering standpoint, but from the beauty of the people of Gaza. Really, once you go to Gaza, you fall in love with the people there and the country itself. It's different than Sinai. The trees, there's lots of dates and trees and lots of greens, but certainly you will meet the suffering immediately, just a few meters from the border. You'll see and witness how thousands of people took the streets and empty areas as refuge. These are people who have been forced to leave their houses from Gaza and northern Gaza, went down, pushed to the middle province of Gaza, and then from the middle to southern Gaza, Khan Yunis, and then again to Rafah. So some of them pushed 3 or 4 times, and every time they go and set up a tent, simple plastic tent, they push them again and they go down south further, thinking it will be safer. But even some of the tents, we were told, they were hit by airstrikes, so nothing really is safe in the whole Gaza Strip. And the sad part about this is that when you talk to these people later on, we had the opportunity beside the hospital when it wasn't very busy, they tell you that they came from, near Tel Aviv, or they came from Ascalon, and they were pushed down to Gaza. So many of these people were pushed down and down and down, and now they're pushed within Gaza Strip further down. What a suffering, for these families throughout the years until they reach these plastic tents. And it's pretty cold, at night it could be 7 or 8 degrees, and I feel for them, when you go here from your car to the house and back and forth just for a couple of minutes, it's pretty cold. But over there, they're sleeping 24 hours in these tents. It's really harsh conditions. And, there are no stores left behind in Gaza. People are taking the streets. You find people selling some canned food, but if you have money, but who does have money in Gaza? These are only people like us, humanitarian workers, bringing some dollars with them, that they have access to tuna, canned food and things like that. But that's a dream. If you want to buy something and you go and give anyone a couple of bucks, you'll find a lot of children coming from the tents asking for food and asking for you to bring them some water or anything like that. People, they have no access to water, no access to fuel, no access to food. And some of these people, I want to mention that they were well off. I met very respected families, educated families. These are not people like refugees that they have been. Not all of them, they have been like refugees before. Some of them went from Gaza City, they're educated families, and they were well off, but all of a sudden they felt that they have to leave their houses. Many of them told me, I just took my jacket, I didn't have, even with a bombardment from the sea or from the air, to take even a luggage, or my bag. So they just have some clothes and a jacket or something just to protect them from the cold weather, and they ended up in South Gaza. Finally, we made it to the hospital. This is Khan Yunis Hospital in Gaza. For those who know Gaza well, it is a major hospital in Khan Yunis. And it does have about 5 or 6 ORs, so we decided we'll spend a few days over there and to be able, because they told us it's pretty close from where they're fighting, and for us to be effective, we have to be close from the fighting. If you're far away, then you're gonna end up just doing internal medicine and things like that. But we're surgeons, we need to treat the trauma cases, and we need to benefit saving lives, so we have to be close to, unfortunately, to where the fighting is. You will hear the bombardment almost on every few minutes. There's either tank. Now I can differentiate between airstrike and a drone and tank, and that's because the first night we could not sleep, but then the second and third night you get used to that, and you have to focus on your work, and you have to focus on saving lives, and then between ER and OR going back and forth, you forget about these sounds. But it is terrifying, and again, you would feel, at least we are in a hospital, right? But people, beside the hospital, we had more than 22,000 people taking the area, the vicinity of the hospital, thinking, again, it would be safe, like we talk about Mamadani Baptist Hospital. They think it will be safer than staying away from the hospital. So you feel for them, how these children are able to sleep if they are, forget about the cold weather and being hungry and having no water, but then there's ongoing bombardment all the time. It's terrifying, to be honest with you. You walk, before we headed to the OR, you walk in the vicinity of the hospitals, and you'll figure out that there is another town, before this one actually. There's another town actually. It's 25,000 people, spreading around the hospital, trying just to survive. They are relying solely on humanitarian aids by NGOs and by UN. Whatever arrives. There is no water. They have no electricity. They have no fuel. Right. So you see the miserable lives of the families and the children. In many, we estimated about 500 wounded. And these are simple wounds, but still they need daily dressing and daily care. They are staying in these tents beside the hospitals because there is no capacity in the hospital to take care of any simple wounds. They leave the hospitals for the complex things. So these are people that they need daily care, and despite this, we cannot reach out to them because we don't have capacity. These hospitals, they reach about 200 to 300% of the occupancy rate. So if they have capacity, like European hospital went there, about 500 beds, they have 1,500 patients, right? So imagine that on top of that, there are patients in these tents, so nobody really has time to visit these tents. So when I walk between the tents in and out to the hospital, everyone's just pulling me when they know that you're a surgeon or a physician. Can you please see my mom? Can you please see my dad? Can you please see this? Nobody has checked his wound. It's overwhelming. It's really overwhelming to be able to check on every single patient in the vicinity of the hospital. So these are the tents set up in the vicinity of the hospitals, and it's just like a city. People and children are just walking around and trying to have some fun, but unfortunately, the drone, I feel it's 24-hour surveillance on top of us. And you're being watched 24 hours, and airstrikes, and you hear the tanks beside you. There's no fun there, but they're trying to adapt and have some fun over there. So we headed to the OR. This is where we're sleeping actually. They were kind enough to give us some blankets, but I noticed that they don't have blankets themselves. There were no pillows. Next time we will bring our own pillows. We figured out they have no pillows, so we just put our jacket and we made our own pillow, and we're able to sleep. You appreciate everything you have in this life, even the pillow that you were able to enjoy, 7 or 8 hours of sleep, or a blanket, or a good mattress. They did their best to provide us with this. But then you head to the OR. This is just the bombardment that you see from the hospital. This is Khan Yunis. It's not far away from you. Every few minutes you see an airstrike and bombardment, and you hear the tanks, beside the hospital. But as I said, you have to cope with that, and you have to focus on your work. Once we went to the ER, and the problem is that it is an influx of patients, and all of a sudden you have 15 children, women, men, you name it, coming to the ER, right? And initially I thought, I have to be in the OR because this is what you do as a surgeon. But I figured, I did a trauma fellowship here. I was lucky to have some skills in trauma and triaging patients, so I spent a lot of my time in the ER trying to triage the patients, because you lose lives if you focus on who is very severely ill or a traumatic injury, and then the moderate injury, you kind of forget about it. By the time you move from the severe injury to and you lose that patient, then you go to the moderate will become severe, right? And then you almost lose the second one, right? So it is the most difficult decision as a physician, as a surgeon. Imagine in these ugly wars that you have to make a decision who's going to live and who's going to die. It is that bad. If you ask me what's the most difficult and challenging moment you had is in the ER, not in the OR, suturing and taking bullets or controlling and bleeding. It's an easy job for us in the OR. But down in the ER, when you have 15 patients coming because of an airstrike nearby, on the street, in a tent, in a house, then you have to focus and figure out you don't have the capacity to take care of 15. You have the capacity maybe to take care of 4 or 5. You have 5 ORs only. So you have to eliminate some patients. Otherwise, if you have enough room and enough capacity, enough staff, like in Toronto or Hamilton, you would call a second and third team, you open an extra OR, and here we go, you can save everyone. But when you have an influx of many injuries at once, and all severe injuries, you have to decide, this is very severe. And one injury, one patient, it doesn't mean one surgery. Because many of these kids, they have head injury, they have chest injury, abdomen, shrapnels, and then leg injury. So you may need like 4 surgeons working on one kid. So, and that will really exhaust the whole team you have in the OR. So this is the most difficult thing to decide, that this kid, I'm not going to be able to save his or her life. Let's move to the second one, right? And focus on the one with moderate injury that probably will reach the OR. We can probably save the second one. We can't save the first one. In the OR, we work day and night, particularly with limbs injuries. And for some reason, when the airstrike hits the road, the shrapnel gets up and impact the legs and the lower extremity more than anything else. So lots of amputations, unfortunately, we had to do. And again, if you are not in a war zone, you will be able to save many of these limbs because you have the luxury of time and ability to focus on putting the vessels back together. You have enough time to do that. But again, you're thinking that they're telling you, oh, we have 4 or 5 patients very, very ill. They need to go to the OR. What do we do? So unfortunately, again, not only in the first place in the ER, you decided who's going to live and who's going to die. Now you have to decide that, you know what, I don't have time to fix this vessel. It's going to take me an hour or 2. Let's just do an amputation and move to the second one, because we're trying to save 2 lives. Amputation probably will be easier, and then you have more time to save a second or third patient. That's a pretty hard decision, but unfortunately this is the reality of war. So we did a lot of amputations. Our orthopedic surgeons were quite busy until midnight doing amputations. We did a lot of head injuries, trauma, and a lot of chest and abdomen injuries as well. This is at the end of the day. This is a neurosurgeon from Duke, thoracic surgeon from Trillium. The third one is orthopedic great Samir, Dr. Samir from Chicago. My bed is number 5, and then another orthopedic surgeon from Detroit. We just like arrive at midnight and just so tired. And alhamdulillah, there was only one positive thing for us as surgeons, which is not good for the patients, I guess, but by midnight, for some reason, the bombardment goes very high, right? I think they told us because the drone, they can see us, but we cannot see them. That's what they told us, the people over there. So they have better control of where to head and what to do with less resistance. That's what I've been told. But the bad part about it is that the injured, they will not be able to be saved by the ambulances, by the EMS, because it's not safe. If any ambulance moves in the middle of the night, it will be hit, right? So the ambulances decided, and I think that's wise because we need their lives as well. We have only so limited ambulance staff that they can't, after midnight, they can't move and evacuate patients. So that was the only good thing for us, because from midnight until 7 in the morning, we don't see injuries. No new injuries hit our ER department, so we can sleep for a few hours. But then 7 in the morning, they will start, getting these injured to our ER, and then we see a lot of patients coming all of a sudden. But unfortunately, many of them, I'm sure, I don't have the data, they died beneath the rubbles, again, because the ambulances cannot move to save them and to bring them to the hospitals. I mean, this, difficult scene, you'll see a lot of suffering of the people that they took the hospitals as refuge. The children are asking for water because they know that we have, although it's very limited water. I did not take a shower for the first week, and then you appreciate any water. Then after 1 week, they told me there's a tent, they have some cold water. I said, I don't care, it doesn't have to be warm or hot. I just want to take a shower. So many of these kids, not only they did not take a shower, they did not really have access to clean water, and they know that we have some stored water in the hospital, so they would follow us and nag us to open the door for them so they can get some water to their families, to their tents. This is the way they're living on a daily basis. Then, as I said, between the cases, if I feel that they don't need me in the OR, I would spend more time in the ER department and trying to triage. And many of these injuries are simple. We do CAT scan, we assess these patients, and you can stitch them in the ER. But during that time, when you are stitching, a little bit more relaxed, there's no major bleeding, you figure out again another story of the suffering of the Gaza people. I put some stitches. I remember this boy, 9 years old, and I reassured the mom. She was so happy that he doesn't have to go to the OR. And everyone is so happy that this is not another big casualty. But then I tell her, I'm thinking, I'm in Canada, well, just to bring some painkiller or antibiotic. And she says to me, well, first of all, I don't have money. And the second thing, there's no pharmacy in the whole Gaza. And I get stuck, what do I do? So I tell the nurse, can you come and give her a shot of antibiotic or some IV painkiller? But then I think, what she's going to be doing? So I say, well, come back every day. Just keep coming back. If we're not busy, we'll give you a shot of antibiotic, because we brought a lot of medical supplies with us. But that's another tragedy, when you discharge a patient, if someone is doing well, they don't have access to medical care, they don't have access to medications, and even if there's a pharmacy, they don't have the money to purchase that. That's another sad story that we had to face with discharging patients, not home, but back to their tents, wherever they live. This is one of the many injuries that we face in Gaza, and that's another challenge that, let's say, you do 500 surgeries within a week or two, then you're going to end up with many open wounds. These are ex-fix that we don't use as much in Canada, because ideally you need to do internal fixation to the fractures, right? That's more definitive treatment. But over there, first of all, there's no sterility, infection can happen, and if you drill anything in the bone and you put it inside the bone, then likely this will become an infection. You want to avoid that, so you end up doing lots of external fixation. But then these external fixation, they're gonna go to their tents. It will take them longer time. Instead of 1 month to be able to walk, maybe 3 months. And these are, many of them, they have open wounds. So you are facing now a lot of wounds that they need to go back and forth to the OR to be able to do some debridement and to be able to do some plastic surgery. And we had only one plastic surgeon that he came from Al-Shifa hospital. I recorded a full interview with him because the story he told me about Shifa Hospital, we can write a book about it, how they invaded the hospital and how they tortured them for 8 days, and how they, tortured the physicians there. And they took one of them, they had Dr. Abu Salmiya, and until now we don't know where he is. But anyway, so there's only one plastic surgeon, so you have to be innovative and to be able to close these wounds and do some, what we call flaps and things like that, but they need to come back and forth to the OR many times, as opposed to when you do internal fixation, you're done. But that's again the reality of the war. Next. A lot of the injuries are children. This is one of the surgeries I did over there. 10 years old boy. And when the shrapnels get into the abdomen, It's spread all over, so it takes you hours sometimes. It's not like gunshot. Gunshot in US, Miami, or thanks God not much in Canada. It's easy because you have entry and exit wound, right? So it's easy most of the time to fix that injury. But when there's an airstrike, then the shrapnel's spread all over the abdomen. So that kid, for instance, had like 20 small injuries in the whole small bowel and large bowel. It really drains your energy, and you're just trying to figure out any small spot that you have not sutured to be sure that leak is not going to happen, infection is not going to happen before that patient goes back to the ICU. And unfortunately, in Canada, you know, when you finish a surgery, you just like sign over to the ICU physician, you're done, right? You just go and relax a little bit. But every time I say this patient needs ICU and say, doctor, you know, you're coming from Canada, what do you think? We don't have enough beds in the ICU. All what we have are 10 beds and they're occupied. So again, you have to be innovative and you have to think, where could I keep that kid with proper care, because they needed 24 hours monitoring. So then you assign a nurse and you tell the nurse, please do not leave this kid. We don't have a monitor, please just take the vitals every few minutes because it's critically ill. So that's another challenge that you have to cope with in a war zone. And there are good, nice moments, you know, just trying to enjoy my time and, you know, to decrease the suffering, if you will. You're not going to eliminate the suffering of the kids there. But some of these kids are just joining their families. They're not injured. Maybe they lost their dad, they lost their mom. There's always bad stories about it. But I feel they want to talk to us. You know, every time I walk, they say, hello, good morning, you know. So you need to give them some, you know, contact, you need interaction, you need to sit with them. So I would sit with them, you talk to them, you ask them, you know, what are you doing? How was the school? They say, we don't have a school now. How was it even before that? And you try just to keep them busy because I felt, you know, my wife sent with me a lot of protein chocolate bars. Probably ate one of them, but I was able to distribute it among all these kids. But I felt bad that I did not have toys, because these kids, they really need toys, really more important than food sometimes for them. And we did not have toys, so just like hang around and try to talk to them and spend some time with them. Beautiful kids. Kids of Gaza are really beautiful. And that was really one of the good moments that I had in these hospitals. This is some of the great physicians I met in Gaza. I'm not a hero by all means. Please don't call me a hero. We go there for a week or two, but these are the true heroes. This physician, you know, he speaks English fluently, and he has another nationality from Ireland. But he preferred not to leave Gaza. He sent his family and he said, I can go to Ireland tomorrow, but I'm staying with the Gaza people. He's been there for 3 months. He suffered in the Shifa hospital. He was interrogated by Israeli forces for a few days, and he stayed with the last patient of Gaza. And he told me a lot of stories of how even the WHO neglected the patients there. They had more than 300 patients at some point in a Shifa hospital, and the WHO sent only 10 ambulances. Imagine 10 ambulances to evacuate 300 patients. Many of the patients had to walk with a chest tube coming out of their chest, drains coming out of your body, to walk, and not 1 or 2 kilometers, to walk all the way down 10 or 20 kilometers until you reach a reasonably safe area in South Gaza. Look at the suffering these patients and even these doctors went through until they were able to get out of Gaza. He's a plastic surgeon, and you know, the purpose of the trip was not only to do surgeries and trying to help the doctors and nurses over there, but to do a need assessment. I spent quite a bit of time with a great heroic surgeon who decided to stay in Gaza, and we had a plan. So we went to visit some sites in Rafah area. Although again, nothing is 100% safe in Gaza, but at least we were able to do some need assessment and figure out reasonably safe spots because I know from the Syrian war that the next step, hopefully, ceasefire will happen. Hopefully, Biden will say ceasefire, because I know Biden says it. There will be ceasefire, but I wish Biden would go. And I told the media today. I had some media coming to my house. I said, I wish Biden just comes with me. They said, what do you wish? Just one day to see the suffering of these children, the cold, the hunger, the injured, how we change their dressing in the tents, and then he will say ceasefire. If this happens to his child, he will say ceasefire. But at the end of the day, we need to plan for the next stage. And I know from our experience in the Syrian war that we will see a lot of patients needing rehabilitation, needing physiotherapy. With all these amputations that we're doing, it will be months of rehabilitation need for these patients, and they can't just keep sitting in the tent. So we were able to go and visit some reasonably well established buildings with potentially being able to make them a hospital for rehabilitation, physiotherapy, and some further wound care. And so the connections with the physicians on the ground, the connections with these heroic surgeons, it's a big asset for us as a medical organization. So we know how to plan for the next phase after this war for the months to go. There are very good stories, and you're very proud of it. This is one of the kids, 8 years old, who had to being evacuated with his family from Gaza City, went to Rafah. They're renting a house. I'm not sure how they found a house amid this destruction. And then an airstrike hit them just last week. And so he came with his family. The mom is shaking, the dad is shaking, and he was hypertensive. He was not very responsive. And a shrapnel went from his beat, the clavicle, all the way down to the heart. And we did, this is the CAT scan, and you can see, you don't have to be a radiologist, you can appreciate the shrapnel in the pericardium on the left side of the heart. This is on the left side where there's some black, spots around the whitish spot. This is the shrapnel. And I wasn't sure how this is still alive. When you look at this picture, it's not compatible with life. So I was able to go back and forth, and I have some mentors from Britain that went in the Syrian war, a great surgeon. So radiologists from Britain and people were engaged in, and we had that net, thanks God. This is another story, when they shut down the net, then you have no connections with the world. Next day there's net, and one day there's no net. So we had net that day, and the British physicians were back and forth with me and give me some input and second opinion. And they said, Anas, you have to operate on that kid immediately. And there's a lot of blood around the heart. If you can appreciate that kind of gray area around the white, this is blood surrounding the heart. And that's why he's hypertensive. He's bleeding from the heart, but he's still alive. So we took him to the OR because we had a thoracic surgeon in the team immediately, and we were able to open this is the same kid, the pericardium, the membrane around the heart, evacuated the blood, and we found the shrapnel. This is something I've never seen in my career, actually. It was in the left atrium. We stopped the bleeding, we took the shrapnel, and as far as I know, at the time we left the hospital, he was still alive. It is the most beautiful feeling in your life, is to save a life. And the family, they were so happy. And in the whole trip, we hardly had access to water, but when we finished the surgery, the family brought me some nuts and juice. I don't know, I never seen any juice in Gaza. I don't know where they got it from and how much they paid for that. But in order not to put them down, I took it from them. And they drank that juice for the first time, after a week or so. What a great feeling to bring this to life again, and give them the kid back to his family and to his home. I don't know where they're gonna go after this second home that they're renting is hit, but at least we were able to save some lives, and that was a great feeling. Sorry, this is a little bit graphic, but this is what we're doing every day. This is a chest surgery, and we were able to get that shrapnel and evacuate the blood and stop the bleeding in that kid. Next. And you can appreciate, we move the patients out of OR, but sometimes they end up in the hallway because there are no proper beds, there are no stretchers, and we just keep them in the hallway or whatever we have. A little bit of space, we park their stretcher, and that's what it is. That's the site that we visited in southern Gaza, and MSF took the bottom, and we're planning hopefully from Canada to take the third and fourth place. We have beds now already there, so we brought about 70 beds in that hospital. And I feel it will be a great project for us to get a rehabilitation unit, to get all these wounded out of the hospital, and we can, do some basic debridement for the wounds. And instead of doing this in the tents, we can do it with proper care, with proper nurses and proper, plastic surgeons. And I'm following up with this project and following up with a plastic surgeon that he came from Shifa Hospital, and hopefully we'll make this happen soon. With this, just for the sake of time, I want to thank you everyone for attending. Thank you for the support. And again, we did our best and we saved many lives, but we lost many lives. This is the reality of any war. But I want to say something and up with many patients and physicians told me, please, when you go back to Canada, raise awareness and tell your government, your top people, to push, Israel or U.S. government to stop the war. I think this is the message we have to focus on. Yes, they need water, they need fuel, they need medical supplies. But really, from a little bit of engagement with our government and with the help of Javid here in this room, actually, in the back here, do not estimate anything. A couple months ago, I met with the MP, Mrs. Tassi here, and to be fair, she was quite responsive, and she assigned her manager, and he was following up with me for a couple months, and we had the opportunity to meet with the PMO office. And I was, really harsh with them, and every couple of days sending them an email. Out of 5 emails, they respond to an email. That's fine. I mean, you have to keep pushing. And they say, okay, well, we'll tell the Prime Minister, we'll do this and that. I was focusing on the medical and humanitarian care and telling them that this is going to go really bad and we're going to lose a lot of lives, a lot of children. And we put a lot of pressure. We kept, the pressure with press releases, a press conference with many other groups for Gaza. And finally, the Prime Minister, he called for a ceasefire. Is it good? I think it's good. Is it late? Very late, but better than nothing. And I think, to reiterate, the people there, they asked me, please continue raising awareness, pushing the government, doing PR work for us, because we feel that we are neglected. And I think this work now, I believe in it, it's even more important. Do not underestimate reaching out to your MP. They are representing you. This is their job. Tell them about the stories. Tell them about what you see in the media from humanitarian, from healthcare organizations, and that they have to act and they have to push. Really, this is not politics. This is humanitarian, and Canada has been known for the humanitarian values in the past, and unfortunately in this war we did not do a good job we were impacted by how the U.S. allies they're acting, unfortunately. But you've seen, some European countries in the beginning were hesitant, and then they swayed, and then now they're pushing for more ceasefire and to stop the war. So I think we have the message: we have to continue to push. Do not underestimate that connection with your MPs, with your top government people. Continue to write, continue to be organized, reach out to them, meet with them, educate them. That's their job, and they have to push for the ceasefire. Thank you very much.